Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So today I've just jumped on to do my Forex forecast, and this will be Forex forecast for the week commencing the 22nd of August 2022. And before we get started guys, I will just draw your attention to the written version of this forecast, and the written version will be linked in the description. So if you guys want to check that out, just click the link in the description. Alright guys, so let's get into it. Alright, so as usual, starting with Nzdusd today. So Nzdusd, the last few weeks, so we was in this overall bearish structure, and within that whole bearish situation, we've had this break here, which was followed by this break. So for me, that left behind two clear order blocks. We had this one which didn't get respected, and then we had this order block up here, which I've been talking about the last few weeks. So for me, while you could refine it, the overall order block is still technically this whole buy candle. So at this point now, we have tapped into this bearish order block and we are now reacting away from it. So what we've also got is these two bullish breaks in play. So I mean, technically, most recently we have had a bullish trend transition on the daily, but even though it's technically transitioned to a bullish trend, we are still overall in this sell situation, and we are now coming away from this sell order block, and we have now broken structure on the bullish trend. So for me on NZD overall, we are just very bearish at the minute. Alright, so in terms of what I actually foresee happening this week, so at the minute there's two main things happening. So we're reacting off this overall bearish order block here, and that lines up with this continued bearish move. So really what I'm expecting is that we are just going to be continuing bearish and breaking below here, and that will follow this overall bearish downtrend that's been going on. So for me, I'm expecting now that this move is going to continue to break below. Now, looking at 4 hour, what we've got at the minute is these two order blocks here. So going into the start of the week, I'm just going to be looking for this bearish continuation on the 4 hour. And the first place I'll be looking for it is from this order block here. And then if this one doesn't hold, then I'll be expecting price to sell off from this 4 hour order block here. So going into the week, it's basically just initially waiting for a retracement on the 4 hour. And when we retrace into here, we can look to sell out of there. If that one doesn't hold, I will expect this one to hold. And I do think that we are then going to see that continued sell move coming out of one of these order blocks. Now, after we've sold out of these order blocks, the first place I'm targeting for price is for it to come down here into this bullish POI here. So this bullish order block, we can see there's imbalance left behind, and this is what actually caused the initial bullish break from the previous couple of weeks. So for me, whilst I am expecting overall that we're probably going to see this broken, because on the bigger picture we are still very bearish, I would expect some type of bullish volume to come out of this order block here. So I think we've got to be aware of that. Now, what's also happened is we've got this break of structure here. Now, if we look where that really originated from, it was actually this order block up here. So what wouldn't surprise me basically is that firstly we see the 4 hour POIs playing out. So one of them will cause this bearish move, which will take us down into this bullish POI here. And then at that point, when we hit into the bullish POI, one of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to continue and just smash through it and then make lower lows, continuing with this huge downtrend, or we'll see a significant amount of bullish volume coming into the market. And then for me, I'll expect that we could push up as high as this order block here before we then do sell off and do eventually break that low. So either way, I'm anticipating eventually that this low is getting broken just because of the overall downtrend. But when we do get into this bullish order block, we could see either a small or quite a significant bullish reaction. And we do have that order block there with imbalance as a reason to come higher out of here. So that's what I'm seeing on NZD-USD this week. But in terms of actual trading opportunities, I would just recommend waiting for this 4 hour. And then when we get into one of these 4 hour POIs, look for sells out of there. And then it's up to you guys whether you want to do the counter trend on the bullish POI down here. So that's what I'm seeing on NZD this week. And if that's not clear, guys, just check out the forecast, the written version, sorry, and that should be clear in there. Alright, so now we've got AUD. Alright, so a couple of things going on AUD. So first, let's take a look at the weekly. So on the weekly, we can see we're in this overall downtrending move. Now within that downtrend, we're currently in a range from this high to this low. Now what we can see, we've not actually tapped into this order block yet on the weekly, and I've also refined it to capture the imbalance, and we've not tapped into that yet. So for me, at some point, it still makes sense that we could end up higher up here before we do actually break this low. But that said, we have come into the premium area, so I mean, it's also perfectly valid for price to just continue down at this point now, especially when we've had this engulfment printed. So go down to the daily. On the daily, what we can see is we was in this bullish situation where we had 2 consecutive bullish breaks, but we have now. Alright, we've not actually broken the daily structure yet. We've transitioned on the 4 hour, which I'll show in a minute, but on the daily, we've not actually broken yet. So technically, we could still continue out of here on the daily to go higher, but for me, I really don't foresee that happening. So I'll show the 4 hour in a minute, but what I'll expect is similar to NU on the daily. We're going to basically follow the 4 hour to come down here. That'll take us into this bullish order block here, and then at that bullish order block, I will expect some type of bullish volume coming into the market, but that's where we'll have to see whether that bullish volume is just going to be a small reaction before we then break structure and violate this and just continue with the downtrend, or potentially this bullish order block could cause a decent sized buy move, which will take us up to mitigate that weekly POI, which hasn't actually been properly mitigated yet. So that's my overall view on AU, but let's look at the 4 hour. So on the 4 hour, we've had basically this break structure here, and then we've had this break here. So for me, I just pay attention to the last 2 breaks of structure. So we've got the most recent break structure came from this one here, and then the one before that came from here. So for me, very, very similar to NU, because obviously they're highly correlated. Start of a week, I am just going to be watching the 4 hour, and I'm firstly going to look for sales out of there. And then failing that, I will just look for sells out of this one here. So that's AU for me this week. And then when we do get down here, if you want, you can look for counter trend buys. I mean, for me, I'd want to see a 4 hour transition before I start buying AU, just because I am expecting overall that we are going to continue bearish. And as well, while we can look at the weekly, and technically we've not tapped into that weekly order block, if you look at the 4 hour here, you can see we've got this very clear candle. So that is clearly an institutional candle or an order block, whatever. That's a very clear candle. So for me, we have now just reacted off that, and we do see this bearish price action kicking in. So I am just now expecting that bearish continuation really to then break below, and I'll expect the same on NU pretty much. Alright guys, so moving on to EU. So on euro dollar, we're still in the same bearish range that I've spoke about for the last few weeks. So for me, looking at the daily, there's still equally valid reasons as there was in the previous weeks for price to come up to here. So in terms of the daily, I do still expect price could come up to here before breaking below, and if we do get up to there, then I will look for sales out of both of those areas. Now, that said though, we have basically returned, we halfway filled this imbalance, so we've come above the equilibrium of the range, and we've also come into this imbalance, and then we've started seeing this very aggressive, impulsive nature price action kicking in. So considering that we had this sort of impulse correction there, and now the impulsive nature's kicked back in, I am just really quite open to the idea that price is now just going to continue down following this overall downtrend, and it's not actually going to get into these more extreme areas that I've marked. So for me, I'm just going to be following the 4 hour on euro dollar. So looking at the 4 hour, we broke this structure originally, but as I say, I'll look at the last 2 breaks. So for me, the last 2 breaks of structure, we've got this break structure here, that left behind this order block here. So I mean, most ideally this candle, but the whole thing is the order block, and then it also left behind this order block here. So for me, I'd be happy to sell out of either of those. So it's quite similar still to AU and NU, and for me, I'm just going to be following the 4 hour and looking to sell out of these 2 areas to continue with the 4 hour bearish structure, which will most likely then end up breaking this low down here. So that is EU this week for me. Alright, so pound dollar. So pound dollar, the last couple of weeks, well, the last few weeks, I've been talking about this overall sell thesis, which was this POI here. Now, what we've actually seen is pound dollar, it's literally come back up into the POI that I spoke about, and then it's reacted off it, and we've now started really quite aggressively moving away from it, and we've done 500 pips almost so far. So what I'm expecting now really is just that continuation of this whole bearish situation that I've been talking about, and you know, because we've now mitigated this, I am expecting like quite a significant trending move really to the downside. So that's what I'm seeing on GU. I'm expecting the price is just going to now continue down away from this and then takes into them new lows. Now, with that said, though, with that said, we do have a bullish order block here, which hasn't been violated yet. So for me, whilst I'm overall more in favour of a bearish move, until we do see this bullish order block violated, I will expect that there's a decent chance of some type of bullish reaction coming into the market. So I think looking at the start of the week, we could potentially look for a counter trend reaction on this bullish order block, and I do think that would make sense. And then also within the 4 hour, what we've got is this break here, and we've got this POI which has been left behind, which is a nice clear candle. It's got imbalance on it, and it's got no imbalance above it. So for me, I think that this candle here is the most likely reaction point for GU. So going into the week, what I'd expect is potentially a counter trend move, bring us back up into this 4-hour POI, and then we can basically move away from there, and that will continue the downtrend and take us into lower lows. So that's how I'm looking at this week on pound dollar. And then of course this is still technically a bullish order block. So if that doesn't hold, if this doesn't hold, we could just see it continue higher. I'm not opposed to that, but I don't think I'll be looking for any trades to continue higher because for me, we are just very bearish at a minute, and I am just expecting it to either just continue downwards straight away, violating this, or to return to a 4-hour order block and then continue downwards from there. So that is what I think of GU this week. Alright, so pound yen finally. So looking at the daily on pound yen, at the minute we're in this bullish range between this high and this low. Now within that we've also got we've got this bullish range here, which is the most recent range, but then we've got the overall bullish thesis, which is from this order block here up to this high up here. So within pound yen, we basically have a reason to come lower, which I spoke about many times in the previous weeks. But then we've also got this order block here supporting the price to go higher. So for me, really, it comes down to what's happening on the 4 hour, and I'll just be looking to follow the 4 hour because I think on the daily we could go either way at the minute. So looking at a 4 hour, we've got this order block here, which I spoke about in previous weeks, and that's because it caused a break of structure there, and then it's not been violated because we only have one more break. So for me, at the minute, we are still respecting this overall sell thesis because if we think price came back up to here to mitigate this order block originally, we've now moved away, come back up, respected this wick, so we've got an order block there that's been respected, and then we've now started to see this bearish order flow type price action coming in. So for me, the first thing to look for this week will just be, if you're interested in lower time frames, the lower time frame continuation of pound yen, and that will just take us through to break this daily low. Now, so for me, overall, we're definitely bearish at the minute on pound yen. But what I will say is, if we can break above here, if we can get another bullish break of structure, then potentially I'd be open to looking for buys then, following away from this overall bullish situation, which is potentially unfolding on the daily. So that's pound yen for me. I'd say start the week looking for sells, and then if we do get this impulsive bullish move which breaks structure, then at that point that'll be my confirmation to start looking for buys instead of sells. So that's what I'm seeing on pound yen. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this forecast this week, and I hope it's clear for you. Sorry if I've had a bit of a dodgy voice. I've got a bit of a bad throat at the minute, but I thought I'd still come on and get a forecast out anyway. So guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've all had a good week. And I hope that you all have a safe trading week this week. Stick to your trading plans, stick to your risk management, and just make sure not to overtrade, guys. So thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed the forecast. Cheers, guys.